Tekken 6 is somewhat of a sore spot for the Tekken franchise in a lot of people's mind. I, on the other hand, have always had a soft spot for Tekken 6. It was my third Tekken game, and I had played it after Tekken 5 and 3. But going back and looking at my history with the game, I wonder if I really enjoyed it as much as I thought I did. So, I thought I would answer the burning question, is Tekken 6 misunderstood, or am I just bathing in the rays of a lost childhood? Tekken 6 first debuted all the way back in 2006 at E3, as E3 was still a trade show back then, and the only people allowed on the premises were developers, journalists, and a select few people. We've only seen camera footage of the first Tekken 6 demo. The footage showcases different angles and fancy camera work for a silver of a fight between Jin and Lily. The footage was rendered in real time according to Katsuhiro Hara himself for the Namco 3.5 system arcade machine. This arcade machine itself was based off the PlayStation 3's motherboard at the time. The next year, on November 26, 2007, the first public version of Tekken 6 was available on the Namco system 357. This will also be Hara's first Tekken game as a producer, taking over from Tekken veteran Hajime Nakatani. Just like the Tekken series will receive a new producer, Tekken 6 will go on to have another version in Tekken 6 Bloodline Rebellion. Tekken 6 Bloodline Rebellion would come to arcades over a year later on December 18, 2008. This version of Tekken 6 would be the one that we would get on consoles in October 2009. This was 2 years after the original arcade version in 2007. This kind of makes sense when you think about it. Tekken 5 had multiple versions to release in arcade with many additional console ports. Maybe Tekken 5 did well initially, but began to taper off as they released an updated version of the same game, asking money from the player each time. What would make the release of Tekken 6 on console interesting would be the first time the series would come to an Xbox system. Tekken at that point in time was synonymous with Sony's PlayStation. Even the arcade version of Tekken 6 was developed on a PlayStation 3 motherboard as mentioned before, but Xbox wouldn't be the only release of Tekken 6. It would also receive a PSP port in 2009. Similar to Tekken 5 and other Tekkens before it, Tekken will receive console exclusive modes, one of them being the Scenario Campaign. Scenario Campaign mode was added to the console release of Tekken 6. This mode detailed the narrative of Tekken after the events of Tekken 5. After winning the King of Iron Fist tournament, Jin is slowly induced by the devil within and begins world domination as head of the Mishima Zaibatsu. Kazuya, leading the G Corporation, wants to stop this for his own reason. With the war raging on between the two, a new addition to the Mishima family starts a rebellion to stop the destruction. This mysterious new Mishima is the spawn of the baby maker himself, Heihachi. This one goes by Lars Alexanderson, and Lars is a character in Tekken 6. The main character of Tekken 6. Lars is what I consider a boring protagonist. His backstory and the way events play out in the campaign for him are kind of generic. But that's not what bothers me about this character. It's the way his personality is portrayed. Sometimes he's shown as this rebel leader with uncontrollable charisma, but at other times he tries to be this stern character that seems like he wants to push people away, making him a well-rounded character. In theory, this sounds cool. In execution, however, it kind of falls apart. The most memorable characters for me are those who have one quirk that outshines the rest of the character, but it doesn't overshadow to the point that we forget that these are supposed to be three-dimensional characters. Lars doesn't have that in my opinion. The best way to put this feeling is that I believe that Harada and the Tekken team seem to match Naruto and Sasuke together in one character and try to balance out their contrasting personalities while toning it down to fit Tekken's somewhat serious plot. That's probably why they got Masashi Kishimoto to make an alternate costume for Lars and Tekken. Also, Lars was in Naruto Shippuden Ultimate Ninja Storm 2. The end result for Lars, however, makes him a very boring character along with other story events involving him. That's how I feel about Scenario Campaign's overall gameplay in general. After trying to finish it, I found it very boring. In between story scenes, you participate in these waves with enemies on a map in which you fight a boss of sorts at the end. More often than not, it's usually a character from the roster. Once you complete the section, you'll unlock this character to then be playable in the Scenario Campaign. This portion of the game is a drag. I've had this game for a long time, more than 10 years, and I've yet to beat this mode. I feel like a fraud for even posting this video because every other game on this channel I've beaten, but this one I quite literally fell asleep playing it. But after saying all of this, I don't actually think it's a bad mode. I like that you have to unlock characters in order to play them in the Scenario Campaign. You also have an online co-op mode where you can play with someone else. I also like the character endings that are presented in the games. They are beautifully rendered in 3D and give context to each character's involvement in the story. And while I do like unlocking characters within scenario campaign mode, I didn't like that we had to unlock them in order to get the character endings as well. This would become tedious after a while due to the sheer amount of characters that are present in Tekken 6. Tekken would see one of its biggest launch rosters ever, with Tekken 6 boasting 41 characters. You have a bunch of returning characters like Julia Chang, while getting new characters like the aforementioned Lars. But there was a huge balance problem with Tekken 6. Some of the characters were better at playing Tekken 6 than others. Lars was one of the characters that was really good at taking advantage of the gameplay mechanics. However, there was a ginormous blight that stood on its own among the cast. This character's overbearing presence contributed a large amount of people's disdain for Tekken 6. That character would be Bob.
Now, let the show begin.
Bob was a terror in this game. Not only did his moves reach far, they were incredibly fast for Tekken. When Tekken 6 was competitively alive, Bob would cast a hefty shadow on tournaments with the amount of play he would get. At one Evo, he represented at least half of the top 8. But it wasn't just in offline events in which Bob would dominate. Tekken 6 was one of the first fighting games I had played online ever. I'll never forget this moment. I thought I was okay enough to go online and play against other people, but man was I wrong. The first person I played against, suffice to say that it was your typical noob's first online match. I lost horribly. I chalked it up to inexperience and kept playing it anyway, but then I kept playing against Bobs for like the next 3 games. In the whole entire session, I only ended up playing one law player, with the netcode on the game already being bad. I low-key wanted to quit Tekken 6. Instead though, I opted to let the Bobs win each time I faced them. I guess I erased that memory from my mind until I started this mini retrospective. But despite the balance around the characters, I thought the additions to gameplay were overall a step in the right direction for the series. In my Tekken 5 video, I talked about how the series took shape as a legacy title, beginning with 5. It definitely shows with Tekken 6. Think of the Tekken franchise as a house for a moment. Tekken 5 would be the foundation. Characters' moves and movement, along with other gameplay mechanics such as their rudimentary combos, would start in Tekken 5. Tekken 6 would be the frame in which the walls are built, as combos and stages would be similar to Tekken 6 going forward. Tekken added a combo mechanism called the bounce system in Tekken 6. This is where the BNB was born for Tekken in my opinion. The bounce system was meant to extend combos beyond what you could in Tekken 5, and I think they accomplished that. I reference this combo structure all the time in all my other videos because of how easy it is to follow for those who are not necessarily into fighting games. That, and it gave some uniformity to Tekken's combo system. With the bounce system, combos became structured like this. You do a launcher or land a big counter hit, you follow that up with some type of filler, afterwards you do a bound attack, then an ender. This combo system would play into the other gameplay mechanics like the stages. Stages in Tekken were already important. Some stages would have walls while the others didn't. With Tekken 6 they added wall breaks and floor breaks. When the opponent was hit with a certain move, they would go flying through a wall or crashing through the ceiling, allowing for extended combos. This meant that some characters who played the game well by being able to corner carry or get you in a specific spot on the stage would have an advantage, while not necessarily an issue on its own. All of these would cause a problem in a sense when combined with Rage Mode. Rage Mode was initiated when a character's health would hit a certain low point. This would cause a character to do a lot more damage. And I mean a lot more damage. This combined with wall breaks and the bounce system, it made it possible for characters to kill in one touch in certain situations. In retrospect, I kinda give Harada and his team the benefit of the doubt for this, as they had added a ton of new mechanics to the series. And as a gamer, we tend to end up playing games better than a lot of the people that make them. Maybe in testing they didn't know it would end up that way, but with later iterations they would kind of fix it. Something Bandai got right from its inception was customization. Tekken 6 took what Tekken 5 did with customization and increased it tenfold. I mean, it's so detailed, you can customize each section of a character's hair. What makes this so special in general is that all of this was in-game with no DLC. Everything could be acquired just by playing the game. It's refreshing to see after playing modern games, including Tekken, released with missing features or held back features so they can sell them to you for an absurd price. It's one of the game's strong suits. Something else that adds to the completion of this game is the music. I rarely highlight music when talking about these games, but I had to for this one. I mean, take a listen at this. Do y'all not hear this? I didn't mention it in my Tekken 5 video, but Tekken has some of the best music for video games I have ever heard. Ever since I've been playing fighting games, I would turn down the in-game music and play my own. I still do this to this day. So when I got ready to boot up Tekken 6 and I went to Electric Fountain like it was instinct, I was wondering why the music volume was turned on. I go to turn it down, but the song kicks in, and then the next thing I know is that I'm humming along to a song I hadn't heard in years, literally jigging in my chair. Genuinely some of the best video game music ever. Shout out to Keiichi Okabe, the composer for almost every Tekken, as well as Nier Automata, another great game. If there's one thing I can say about Tekken 6 is that it's probably the most complete Tekken experience. Everything about it exudes a finished product. While it does have its faults with scenario campaign or even its combat, I think the game deserves some merit for nudging Tekken in the direction it's headed in now. Overall, how do I feel about Tekken 6? I think it's a lukewarm release after playing it a few years removed from initially getting it. While it's not important to what I consider the meat and potatoes of a fighting game, the actual fighting, falling asleep while playing a game should never be a thing in my opinion. I love the Yakuza games. I've done reviews for them on my channel and I plan on doing more of them in the future, but those games have very long cutscenes and I've never fell asleep playing those. That coupled with the imbalanced gameplay makes Tekken 6 kind of falter, especially compared to Tekken 5. So was my soft spot for Tekken 6 justified? Yes, but only for the combos. Everything else was kind of mediocre.